for estimating decimals. To start, the first method we learned about with estimating decimals is clustering. That's when numbers are about the same value, we can use clustering to estimate. Clustering means rounding the numbers to the same value. Let's practice this with an example. So example number 1, we're going to do a health application here. Nancy wants to cycle, ice skate, and water ski for 30 minutes each. About how many calories will she burn in all? Well, cycling burns about 165 and 5 tenths calories, ice skating about 177.5 calories, and water skiing is 171 and 5 tenths calories. So I need to look at those three numbers. I have cycling is 165.5, I have ice skating is 177.5, and I have water skiing is 171.5. Those are all really similar to one number. If I had to pick a number that's easy to work with that all of them are close to, they're all close to 170. So I'm going to round all three of them to the same value because that's clustering. So they're all going to be rounded to 170. So instead of having to add those numbers up, I'm just going to add 170 up. I can add that up, or remember, if I'm adding something 3 times, if I'm adding the same number 3 times, I can instead multiply it by 3. So I'm going to get 510 calories burned as my estimate. And I found that using clustering. Our next method that we talked about in class was going to be using rounding to the indicated place value for adding and subtracting. Remember, when I'm rounding, I need to say if it's 5 or greater, I'm going to round up. If it's less than 5, I'm going to not round down, but I'm going to keep it the same. Again, I'm going to look to the number next to the place value that I'm talking about. So I'm going to keep it the same. Let's practice an example with that. So, if I have 7 and 13 hundredths, and I'm going to add that to 4 and 68 hundredths, I'm going to be rounding to the ones place. So the ones place is going to be my 7 and my 4. I need to look to its neighbor in order to round. So I'm going to take the 7 and I'm going to look to its neighbor. The 1 says to stay a 7, so this becomes 7. If I look to the neighbor of the 4, though, it's a 6. It says go up to a 5. So I would add these two together to get 12. My next problem, I'm going to be doing subtraction, but I'm doing the same thing. I need to round to the tens place. Well, I know the 7's in the tens place and the 2 is in the tens place. Then you're always going to look to its neighbor. This 0 says stay a 7, so this stays 9.7. Then when I look to its neighbor here, this says go up to a 3. So I'm going to subtract 0.3. When I subtract those numbers, I get 9.4 or 9 and 4 tenths. Moving on, let's talk about our third method. We have something called compatible numbers. That's what I'm going to use for multiplication and division. Compatible numbers are close to the number, but are going to be more helpful to solve the problem mentally. So I'm looking for numbers that are easier. So when I have this, if I have 33 and 83 hundredths times 1 and 98 hundredths, that's kind of hard to do in my head. But I know that 30 and 38 hundredths is really close to 30. And if I have 1 and 98 hundredths, that's going to be really close to 2. I can do 30 times 2 really fast in my head. That equals 60. When I'm doing division, I should always look at the second number first to round it. So if I have 26 and 14 hundredths, that's not an easy number to work with. A compatible number would be 25. I need to think of a number that's really close to 72 and 77 hundredths that 25 can go into. I know 75. So I'm going to round that one to 75 and the second one to 25 to get 75 divided by 25, which I know equals 3. I have one last method to show you real quickly. The last method we learned about in class was using front-end estimation. That's when I use only the whole number part of the decimal. So for my example, I have 7.86 plus 36.97 and 5.40. What I'm going to do is I'm only going to use the front number. So I'm going to get rid of everything else that's behind the decimal point. My problem, I'm not going to round anything. I'm now going to have 7 plus 36 plus 5. When I add those numbers up, well, I know 7 plus 36 is going to be 43. 43 plus 5 is going to equal 48. This is how I would round, or this is how to use estimation in my 4 different methods.